BingX, a trusted global crypto exchange. Trade spot, futures, or copy top traders easily. Sign up via the link or referral code to get 30 USDT instantly, plus up to 1,500 USDT in bonuses for verification, deposit, and trading.
Prosecution of South Sudan's vice president raises fears of return to full-scale civil war. South Sudan's opposition and observers have voiced grave concerns that the recent prosecution of the nation's suspended vice president, Riek Machar, could shatter the fragile peace accord that ended a brutal civil war, potentially plunging the country back into widespread conflict. The charges, unveiled on September 11, include murder, treason, and crimes against humanity, stemming from a deadly assault by the White Army rebel group on a government garrison in Nasir County, located in the country's northeast. Following this development, President Salva Kiir promptly suspended Machar from his vice presidential duties. This legal action represents the peak of a series of escalations that have unfolded throughout the year, initiated by the Nasir ambush. These events have intensified a long-standing animosity between President Kiir and Machar, casting a long shadow over the nation's precarious peace. The chain of events began in March when the White Army, a collection of community militias that previously aligned with Machar's opposition forces during the civil war, overran a base belonging to the South Sudan People's Defense Forces, SSPDF, in Nasir County. The militia claimed to have acted in self-defense. Tragically, the ensuing violence led to the deaths of a UN crew member and at least 27 SSPDF soldiers a few days later, as a UN helicopter attempted to evacuate personnel from the county in Upper Nile State. In retaliation, the government unleashed aerial bombardments on Nasir and surrounding areas, resulting in civilian casualties and injuries. Human Rights Watch has since accused the military of employing incendiary weapons in these attacks. Authorities also apprehended over 22 political and military figures associated with Machar's party, the Sudan People's Liberation Army in Opposition, SPLMIO, placing Machar himself and his wife, Angela Teny, under house arrest, alleging Machar was attempting to incite rebellion. President Kiir also undertook a significant reshuffling of his cabinet and security apparatus within the transitional government, established by the peace agreement, notably removing officials loyal to Machar. Compounding these tensions, in May, President Kiir elevated Benjamin Bol-mel, the second vice president, a businessman under U.S. sanctions and a close confidant, to the position of deputy chairperson of his party. This move fueled opposition fears that Kiir was strategically grooming Mel as his potential successor. The recent indictment of Machar has further inflamed an already volatile situation. Pal Mai Dang, spokesperson for the SPLMIO and one of the 20 individuals charged alongside Machar, has issued a stark warning from self-imposed exile. He stated, "Within a very short period of time, I think I will be in the bushes of South Sudan because this is what the regime has forced us to do." Deng declared, "Technically speaking, the peace agreement is very much abrogated by the president and his tribal court. No one is left with the room to say that the agreement is still holding." Daniel Akek, a senior analyst specializing in South Sudan at the International Crisis Group, described the prosecution as the last spike in escalations. He elaborated, "This is actually a big escalation in dismantling the agreement, but not only that, putting Machar behind bars in court is creating emotional tensions, and it's dividing the country." The deep-seated animosity between Machar and Kiir traces back to their shared history within the Sudanese People's Liberation Army guerrilla movement, which fought for independence from Sudan, achieved in 2011. Following independence, Kiir assumed the presidency with Machar as his first vice president. However, South Sudan plunged into a devastating civil war in 2013 when Kiir dismissed Machar, subsequently accusing him and others of orchestrating a coup. Machar then formed the rebel faction SPLMIO, igniting a conflict that claimed the lives of over 400,000 people and displaced nearly half the nation's population. The war was characterized by widespread atrocities, including reports of ethnic cleansing, sexual violence, and the conscription of child soldiers. This brutal conflict exposed deep ethnic divisions within the country, largely fought along ethnic lines, primarily between Kiir's majority Dinka community and Machar's Nuer, the second-largest ethnic group. A peace deal, brokered by Uganda and Sudan in 2018, eventually ended the civil war, establishing a unity government and reinstating Machar to the vice presidency. However, the implementation of this agreement has been painfully slow, marred by persistent clashes over power sharing between the two factions. Selam Demisi, a researcher at the Institute for Security Studies, warns that the risk of a return to civil war is huge. She emphasizes, in South Sudan, the one document that's holding the country together is that 2018 peace agreement. Anything that's done outside of the agreement or the consent of these opposing parties can amount to violation of this peace agreement. Demisi further cautions that these actions send a chilling message to other opposition parties, many of which also command aligned militias, suggesting they too could be under threat. The Guardian has reached out to the government spokesperson for comment on these developments. The clashes between militia and government forces that erupted earlier this year in Upper Nile State have persisted and have now spread to 5 other states, with sporadic fighting reported in various pockets. This renewed violence has claimed the lives of nearly 2,000 people so far. According to the UN Commission on Human Rights, approximately 300,000 South Sudanese have fled the country this year alone, largely driven by escalating conflict. In a statement released on Monday, the UN noted, armed clashes are occurring on a scale not seen since a cessation of hostilities was signed in 2017, with civilians bearing the brunt of human rights violations and displacements. The ongoing fighting has also severely hampered the delivery of humanitarian assistance. John Garang Akat, head of program implementation at